Hey everyone, and welcome to the AgeTech Connect podcast. Today, we'll be hearing from John Lariccia, the CEO and co-founder of WelcomeHome. Throughout my conversation with John, we will be diving into the problems that senior living and home health operators face when managing complex client relationships and how WelcomeHome is solving those problems. Further, John shares his leadership philosophy on problem-focused solutions, customer discovery, and bootstrapping an early startup. How you doing, John? Thanks for coming on.
I'm great.
Yeah. I know you're up in Buckhead in your new offices, right?
We are. Yep. We have line of sight into all of the different places where we've built WelcomeHome, from the very lowly co-working space at Rome over to Atlanta Tech Village and now here at Tower Place.
Yeah, I was about to say, I love talking to a fellow Atlanta entrepreneur. You guys started at ATV?
Well, yes, and probably like a lot of entrepreneurs, I started in my car or on my dining room table or, on a run. Our first actual offices were a co-working space called Rome, which is a
Okay.
WeWork competitor, but they are, I think, a half a block or a block from Atlanta Tech Village. And
Yeah.
eventually we ran out of space at Rome and needed to move over to Atlanta Tech Village. And then we ran out of space at Atlanta Tech Village and moved here.
That's a good problem to have. It's got to be nice to be able to see right from where you came from on your new offices. And so you can like literally see the path of your entire company sitting from your office.
It is fun, and it didn't change
Yeah.
anyone's commute patterns.
And I know you were also a old school Age Tech Atlanta member, right? A part of the founding get together, right?
I was, yeah, where was margaritas being served and all of us delusional as to how we were going to change the world.
I mean, not delusional here. We are talking about it. We got a whole podcast set up. You're doing
Yeah,
well, got new
fair,
offices. So,
fair.
it seems like a lot less delusional than it may have seemed. I mean, maybe the margaritas didn't help with the delusion, but
Yeah. Well, I think in order to be an entrepreneur, you always have to have a dose of delusion. So,
yeah, exactly. You can't be too straight-minded in order to come up with something that breaks out of the box.
no, not at all. You have to constantly pivot.
Yeah, for sure. So on that thread, I want to get into your backstory because it's kind of interesting compared to a lot of the folks I talk about because this is an age tech podcast, but your background is neither in aging care or really even in technology, right?
No, not at all. My life is just littered with pivots. I have a home gym and it's
Yeah.
called Plan B because Plan B is always
There we go.
trumping Plan A. I started my career as an attorney of all things. I did that for 4 years in the Pentagon before deciding that that was intellectually stimulating, but not my calling. I then went
Yeah.
to management consulting, which had a lot of the variety that I enjoyed when I was a litigator, but not the same slavish devotion to billable hours on a 6-minute clock.
Mhm.
And when I was at management consulting, worked in a lot of different industries, including senior living. And when I kind of first interacted with those that were in senior living and in home care, got inspired by the mission that these people had, but quite honestly, dismayed on their behalf for the technology and the technology companies that were serving them. But being a consultant, I tried to solve it for a decade with PowerPoint slides and eventually realized that that wasn't going to create lasting change. And so I started Welcome Home with my co-founder and our CTO.
So tell me about some of those problems that you were noticing. It's kind of funny how you said these problems are so deep that I can't solve them from a consultant standpoint. I got to go 100% into this. So like what were you seeing when you were trying to consult with the senior care homes?
Yeah, sales and marketing in senior living and home care is among the most difficult that
Mhm.
are out there. It starts with kind of the definition of who's making the decision. In all instances, there's a senior at the center of it all. Sometimes that senior is driving the decision on their own, but other instances, they might not be legally capable of driving the decision on their own. If they're battling Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, you're surrounded by a set of influencers. And if I'm not even sure among those family members who is driving the sales process itself, and it could constantly be shifting underneath your feet. And so if I take an example in my own life, my mother is sitting there at the center of any kind of decision. She has a husband. He has his own opinions about the matters. He has his children. I'm here and know the space and might want to have an outsized impact, but my sister who lives in LA also wants to be involved. And so you have this kaleidoscope of individuals all wrestling with a challenging decision, even if it's one where there's a lot of excitement and hope for a better day to make the change. It still requires a lot of thought. It's the single biggest decision a family of adults will ever make together.
Oh yeah.
Then you layer in the emotions to it, then you layer in the financial import of it. And a single sales director, typically it's a single sales director or a single admissions coordinator on the home care side, has to navigate all of this. And so for a one person moving in, one person starting care, you can very well have 12 different constituencies that you are trying to communicate with in an empathetic and engaged way. And oh, by the way, that's half the job. I mean, that's just half the job. The other half of the job is working with community partners and referrers. So going out to hospital discharge planners or skilled nursing facilities or home health or a synagogue or church to market the community or the home care so they can get new leads. So that's all of what we saw.
Yeah,
That's
and
all of what we
so
saw.
when you were working with these companies, they were just kind of using incumbent CRMs, I suppose, ones that weren't designed for all the complexity that you see in the senior living space, and maybe just designed for a salesperson who contacts a designated contact at another company. They're already linked up, right? It's a more simple situation, I'd imagine, when you don't have all those complexities associated with elder care.
Yeah. So you'd either see that on one end of the spectrum, it's all in someone's head, right? They're all trying to do it in their head. But that's probably the exception, not the rule. More often than not, it's let me take something that exists for more of a one-to-one and put it into senior living or senior care. And there's lots of benefits to Welcome Home. Database structure, as boring as it
Yeah.
is one of the things that makes it all possible.
Yeah. I want to get into like the specifics of what make Welcome Home,
Sure.
so impactful for senior living facilities. But can you describe to me like the impact on the day to day for the senior living operator, that sales coordinator that you were talking about, and then also on the day to day of the patient side, right? So, like before we have this targeted solution,
Mhm.
how did it impact directly those two populations?
Yeah. So from the sales director or the account executive or whatever the name might be,
Yeah.
nothing falls through the cracks, right? That's the first. I could be as well meaning, and I know that the very best experience for a potential resident or a potential client has the following 15 steps with 7 different off ramps. They don't have to worry about them missing any of that. So that's the one benefit. And the second, I had a mentor that said, have technology do what technology is great at so people can do what people are great at.
Hmm.
Technology is great at recording and transcribing phone calls so you don't have to take notes, at making sure that it's integrated with your Outlook calendar or your Gmail so you don't have to sit there and it's like, okay, I need to send an email to Daniel. Let me go into my email, get his email address, cut and paste it in the CRM, then go back and forth and back and forth. It takes time, but also takes energy. And we've done different studies, and we're saving upwards to 10 hours a week for a sales director that isn't doing all of these menial administrative tasks. And ultimately, they're more effective, right? Because they are in the moment, they're thinking, they're listening, they're not furiously taking notes or worried about, did I send a thank you note to a physician for sending over a referral? So that's what we do on the sales side, on the client side. Now, on the flip side, I mean, why is it better for seniors and their family members? It's the inverse of what I just said. They have a team that's not scrambling. They have a team that's engaged in the moment, that when they're doing a tour, they're there. They're being empathetic, they're being understanding. And ultimately, we like to think that because of that, they find the best solution for them, either in their future home or with a home care provider that is gonna help them stay put.
Yeah, I think sometimes And you look at sales and sales products, it can kind of get a bad rap. It's like you're
Right.
helping sales where it says, oh, I can push more things on the senior, but
Yeah.
I'm not hearing like that's not really what your solution is about, right? It's about increasing the humanity. So like the human can deal with the human component of that really tumultuous, really complex emotional decision of moving mom or dad into a care home while Welcome Home handles all that back end to make sure that everything that the caregiver needs and the salesperson need to find that person the right fit, they're gonna make that happen.
Yeah. And no one goes into sales in senior living or home care because they're a rapacious capitalist.
Yeah.
All of these people are doing it because they love the mission. To a certain extent, we're all salespeople. And I remember early in my career when I had to kind of transition into being more of a salesperson, my client was home based. This was pre COVID. And we were having a business meeting in his office in the basement. And it was lunchtime. And we went and had lunch out of his refrigerator in the kitchen, right? In his family home. And it dawned on me that he's a friend. And what I was going to sell him in terms of incremental services, I would sell a friend. I just believed in it. And I think that's what's beautiful about senior living and home care is that people that are sitting in that seat are selling what they know is for the best for the family and the senior, right? They sit there. And I've been there dozens, if not hundreds of times, where the very best sales director might sit there and say, "It's not time, right?
Mhm.
It's not time for mom. She's not interested. You're pushing too hard. This is not going to be the moment where this becomes a place where she's really excited and she's going to grow within this community and she's going to add to this community. So let her take a beat, right? Maybe the right next step is for her to maintain her autonomy and move into an apartment. We can go through the process of letting go of a dining room table that she has 45 years worth of memories of Thanksgiving around. That's what this is about.
When you were identifying all these problems when you're working as a consultant, did you see a lot of because we have this issue of burnout in healthcare.
Yeah.
At least I don't personally think of burnout as on the administrator end, but
Mm.
I could imagine you would get a lot of that burnout from these sales associates who felt like they were always churning water and they want to place these older adults in the right location, make sure they have the right fit, but they just don't have the tools to do so. And it just feels like you're always one step behind. Does that create a lot of turnover? Do we see that in that space?
No, there's immense turnover in the senior living sales side as well as in home care because it is a tough job. And in many ways, you are constantly losing even when you're winning. Folks that are at this stage either continue to decline. And so maybe you're no longer the right fit for them. And so they have to move into a different level of care or they pass away. And so you're always kind of fighting the back door as to, okay, fine, someone moves in today, but someone's moving out tomorrow. Someone's starting care today, but someone's stopping care tomorrow. You just have to have the right mindset, but it's hard. It's unquestionably hard. And we haven't looked at the data, but we'd like to think that we're helping folks stay in the job because we're making it easier, right? And that's part of it, which is if fundamentally the job itself is hard and you're fighting with your tools or your tools aren't helpful, you have one less reason to stay. And so we try to make sure that at a minimum, you have a partner in Welcome Home, you have a technology that's making your job easier. So we can't change the fact that you're working with 83-year-olds that might not make it to 84. But as you go about your mission, you're not wrestling with your technology.
Yeah, because that's where senior living operators wanna spend their time. They wanna spend their
Yes.
emotional and personal energy
Yes.
diving into the older adult, giving them all they can, right, with the time that they have with them. And then you add on the layer of like, "Oh, I'm trying to do all this, but I gotta do all this paperwork on the back end." And then I'd imagine it also helps out from the caretaker or the family or the older adult's support system. We recently moved my grandparents into an assisted living facility, and my parents are the ones that are putting forth a lot of that work.
Sure.
And they were sold on this care facility by somebody who they really engaged with and liked with. It was some sort of sales administrator. And then as soon as my grandparents moved in, that sales administrator left and somebody else came in. And it's like, regardless of who that other person was, with that turnover, they're like, well, I don't know this person. This new person's telling me things that the old person they said we could do this, but now they can't do this. And that just amount of churn is almost killing the whole transition. I mean, it's creating enough tension that there's been talks of possibly switching, and it's like all just because they couldn't keep that same sales coordinator and that same transition from person to person so that my parents and my grandparents could have a consistent experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The other place where we're trying to push forward and have a platform that is easy enough that the entire community staff can engage on it. So an executive director is essentially the den mother of the community. They are the one that is responsible for it. And, if you could figure out in a very targeted way where to insert them into the sales process, that even if the sales director moves on, or even if the sales director still is at the community, they're focused on the next set of families. They're not there to make sure that, month two, month three, that's solely the responsibility of the activities director, the sales director, the dining director. And what makes us thrilled is when we see within Welcome Home that the software platform is being used by all those team members. We even have people that are in building maintenance that are inside of Welcome
Oh,
Home,
wow.
which is great. They're looking to see, all right, where are there rooms that are available? Are there any notes that says that the carpet needs to be changed, the paint needs to be refreshed? And I think that more people that are inside of Welcome Home, the more they have a sense for who are the future residents and how can I engage to make sure that that person or those people feel welcome.
Now, I wouldn't have thought of the software as being something that everybody in the whole organization could interact with. Can you kind of walk me through what y'all started with when you decided I'm going to build something for this space? How did you enter that space? And then how have you expanded over the last, how many years has it been? Like 9 years you guys have been
We've
public now?
existed for 9 years.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2017, it was ideas on a piece of paper, yeah, and then it became less of an idea on a piece of paper. Yeah.
That counts. So how did it go from the idea on a piece of paper to this really large scale system that you guys have implemented today?
It's constantly evolving. Our core values are listen, care, commit, and those came about reflecting on the 2 years from idea to software in the hands of a sales director in Germantown outside of Memphis, Tennessee. We spent years just listening and just sitting beside sales directors and watching what they did and iterating on, okay, could software help that? Could software help that? In many instances, the answer is no, software couldn't help it. But you observe, you try to translate that into what would be a technology solution or product. You whiteboard it and go back to those or similar people and say, if it could do this, would that be helpful? If it could do that, would it be helpful? And you slowly build out. By no means did I walk away from consulting with a blueprint, hand it to my co-founder. He built it, and the next day it was in the hands, or the next year it was in the hands of a sales director. It was small decisions, lots of questions until we had our first version. I'm surprised that my co-founder didn't strangle me. After we did the first install, I turned to him like, "Well, what do you do now?" Because it's, in my view, it was almost like a consumer product. And he's like, "What do you mean? What do I do now?" He's like, "This is when it actually starts. There's just
Yeah.
countless changes, and it's just countless small and large tweaks. And we have an amazing, engaged group of clients that are in the software every single day, and they have wonderful ideas that they funnel back to us, and we just go through and figure out, all right, how do we prioritize that?"
I can really respect that approach because, sometimes the big complaint is people who are creating solutions in this space is that, oh, well, somebody just came over from the business world and decided, oh, well, I could create a business solution for this senior living facility or really any kind of health tech without understanding the life of the patient and the provider. And it sounds like you guys really did it the right way. And what you had the patience to say, before I just jump in here and have the hubris to say, well, I'm going to solve this problem, I'm going to really, really sit down with these providers. I'm going to understand the patient journey. I'm going to understand where the provider difficulties come in. Is that something that you just felt, was intuitive to you that we have to do this? Or was it a struggle to have so much patience before you put that first thing out there?
It wasn't a struggle. I can only reflect on my journey and our journey. I never dream that Welcome Home would be what Welcome Home is. We just wanted to build a great piece of software supported by a great group of human beings.
Mhm.
And our dream big was if we're working with 1,000 senior living communities and have 25 employees, that would be amazing. And when you approach it that way, it's like, all right, well, I want to build something great. There's no rush. There's no venture capital fund that is looking for me to hit some accelerated metric. Wasn't chasing some headline. It was, let's just build something that we're excited to put out in the universe. And it'd be hubris to think that I would have known out of the gate what that was. And even if I knew 100 things, it would still be 10% of what it needed to be.
Yeah.
Oh,
You might be taking for granted how big of an insight that is. A lot of young startups, a lot of young individuals just say, "Oh, I've got an idea for a problem. I'm a go, go, go," without doing that really arduous process of customer discovery, product market fit. I want to dig
and
into
by the way,
your
I
very
get in trouble for this. I'm going to give
yeah.
you what I get in trouble with.
Okay, I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
I say it out loud. I think it sometimes has some of my team members cringe. I don't love my product. I don't love my product. I just don't. I love the problem that we're solving, and I love that it currently is being solved with the product. But those are different things. I've
Mhm.
seen a lot of folks in our space, they fall in love with their product, and then they end up arguing with the client and
Mm.
arguing with the market as to whether it fits or not, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard when you love something to recognize its flaws, right? That is not where we are. And the moment we fall in love with the product, we get blinders on. And so now, doesn't mean that I'm going to be a pushover. We do our very best to make sure that the features that we put out there and the product that we put out there is solving those problems in a way that makes a lot of sense. But again, it gets into this listen, care, commit. You have to listen, right? If you
Mhm.
put something out there and a client's like, well, it's a little clunky, or it doesn't work the way that I wanted, or wouldn't it be better if X? You got to listen. And they could be wrong. They could be wrong, or they could be looking at it through their particular lens. But even when you're launched, even when you have over 100 employees, even when you have 5,000 senior living communities, even when everyone tells you you're the greatest thing, no, you're not. No, you're
Mhm.
not.
Yeah, I love that. Don't love the product. Love the problem, love the client, but don't love the product, right? That product has to come secondary to those first two things. Now, I saw some announcement that you had recently moved into this new facility and you have this kind of problem focused, customer centered. It's like a slogan that you even put on the door. You're so attached to it. It's like a 3-point thing.
Oh yeah, like who we're listening to, what we're
Yeah, yeah,
committing
yeah.
to.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
all of those too. So
I love that you have it so deeply ingrained in your business model that I'm gonna put it right there on the door for everybody that walks in.
yeah.
And you've stayed pretty strictly in this senior care, senior living vertical, rather than trying to say, "Oh, we have a product, let's expand horizontally." Do you feel like this deep commitment to the problem that senior living facilities face specifically has kept you, pretty stern in that vertical?
I'm a big fan of focus.
Mhm.
In
I can tell.
Yeah, and I have a lot of smart folks, and I have a lot of smart clients that come up with a lot of ideas. And the ideas are always put up against the can it exponentially grow the size of the company and the opportunities, however, the team? Could it exponentially inflect the performance of our clients? Or is it the easiest thing ever? And nothing is ever the easiest thing, right? So you just stare at those. And even though we're at 5,000 communities that we're helping, there's more. All of our growth aspirations, all of our impact aspirations can be met by just focusing on the markets that we're in today. And so we have been called by people that are doing cosmetic dentistry and plastic surgery and dialysis. We've had clients that have gone into those markets and asked us to go in that direction. We've had clients within senior living that have asked us to go into different parts of the tech stack. And there's just so much opportunity to have an impact being sales and marketing focused in senior care
Mhm.
that there's nothing that makes it compelling to go from that. Like, we haven't run out of opportunities, we haven't run out of ideas,
Mhm.
so why not just stick with what we know really well and continue to dive deeper?
I don't know if how much you'll appreciate this comparison, but, like, every time I go to In-N-Out, I feel like that's a similar business model.
Yeah.
They're like, "We do burgers, and we do burgers really well. We don't do chicken sandwiches. We don't do the next big thing." Like, you show up, you get a burger, you get it quickly, and it's really, really good, right? And we're going to keep perfecting the burger, and I think that's why they've done so well and become so iconic.
Yeah. So we're in home care, and
I was about to say,
this
there is one other area you expanded
and let me talk
into.
to you about home care. We
Yeah.
launched in 2019 in senior living, and within 6 months, we had a client, our very first client. There's 3 people that get to claim to be a first client. So, one of those 3 approached us and said, "We have a home care division, and we think Welcome Home could work in home care." And my response was, "No, it can't." "Well, we think it can." I'm like, "I haven't built it for home care. I built it for senior living. Here are the 15 things that I could see why it doesn't work." And their response was, "We don't care. We think that you're wrong." And so we came to agreement. And the agreement was, you could use it for home care for free. You can't ask me anything. Don't ask me to make any changes because I'm giving it to you off label. Any side effects that you have
Yeah.
are on you.
Yeah.
Well, on the whole point of listening, over the next 3 years, more and more senior living operators who had home care divisions asked for Welcome Home to get installed for it, or sales directors left senior living to go to home care and called us up and asked us to use Welcome Home for home care. Well, like, all right, there's a there. And so we dove in and said, okay, what would it take to make Welcome Home world class for that unique audience and that unique market? And what was encouraging is that it involved either taking some things away, like skinnying down the product, which is easier to do than augmenting, and everything that we needed to do to augment 90% of what we needed to do to augment it had residual benefits back to senior living, right? And so
Yeah.
it fell into that double the impact, double the opportunity bucket. It wasn't easy. It's not easy. It's hard, but it creates a cohesive audience that still is rooted in sales and marketing,
Mhm.
providing services, whether residential or non, to those senior citizens and their family, working with those referral partners. And so the hill was worth the climb. So,
Give me some key differences that you encountered when going from senior living to home care. In my head, they're very similar, but what were some of the things that surprised you about targeting your product towards
yeah,
these
I'm
two
not
different
sure it
areas?
surprised me.
Yeah.
So let's go with the easiest, which is if I'm a sales director in a senior living community, the key metric is occupancy. I have 78 rooms with 82 beds. That's it. I am selling a finite number. The concept of occupancy doesn't exist in home care. Now, I might
Mhm.
have one caregiver that is in Fayette County
Mhm.
and he or she is full, but I'm not going to stop selling to Fayette County. If
Mhm.
I get another client that has 20 hours worth of need, I will either ask someone to make the longer drive or I'll hire another person. And so
Mhm.
that's the one, which is one of the key metrics in senior living is, all right, how am I doing driving occupancy? That is an idea in home care is a fantasy. The second is in senior living, 80% of my energy is spent on working with families and prospects who will take months and in some instances years to make a decision. And
Mhm.
20% of my time is working with referral partners, hospital discharge planners, clergy, members of the community, for instance. That's inverted in home care. I am spending 80% of my time out on the road using the mobile app. We've always had the mobile app, but it gets put through the paces. They're generating leads because the seniors in home care make the decision either same day or within a week. And so it's a very
Mhm.
short sales cycle. So it's more what's in the top of the funnel. Those are just two of the examples. Senior living, they have communities that can host events. And so an event planner is much more important for engaging with prospects and referral partners. In home care, no one in the company might have an office. So
Interesting. You got into the mobile app a little bit there. I'm not a sales or marketing guy.
Mhm,
My wife's gonna get mad at me because she works with CRMs and
mhm.
Salesforce and stuff like that, so I should know this better than I do, but things like Salesforce, they don't typically have mobile apps, do they?
What you find more often than not is that folks will have an app that has limited functionality. And so you will be able to do some of your work, some of your functionality will be on your app. And that's something from the get go was different for us. We wanted it to have 100% feature parity regardless of what platform you're on.
That makes sense, especially if you consider the home health aspect of it, but that's not where you guys started. What made you wanna do that from the start?
Because 20% of a senior living sales director's time is doing referrer development.
Mhm.
So we couldn't have 1 day a week them not have access to their CRM.
Yeah.
And And then one of the features that we have is integrated calling. And so when the phone rings, it goes to the app, it logs the activity, it auto responds, and that might be after hours for the sales director, but no one's calling a senior living community for fun, right? And so
Yeah.
we wanted them to be able to be plugged in even when they're on the go or it's slightly after hours because there's a family and a senior in need on the other end.
I think that's a really good example of your customer discovery and product market fit process is it's like the simple things of, most people, if you're running a traditional CRM, you say, well, people are in office, right? If they're doing their CRM work, they're going to be sitting at their desk. You took the time to understand that that's not necessarily the case in your specific vertical in senior
Right.
living.
Right.
Yeah. Now, do you have any other examples of big pivots that you had to take along the journey, right? Because you've been doing this constant customer discovery. And based on your face, I imagine you have a bunch of examples of little pivots you made, but anything that really stands out to you where you had this, big moment of insight?
The big pivot is when we started in 2017, when I started in 2017, I didn't set out to build a CRM. I thought that was too ambitious. I looked at other ways to help the community from data augmentation and lead scoring to pricing and concession optimization. And we built products that launched into the marketplace that failed. I mean, they just
Mm.
failed. They were viewed as a nice to have feature
Yeah.
inside a CRM. They weren't critically important. And I think that both the blessing and the curse when you work in senior living, it's in particular, is that the clients are very nice. And sometimes nice and honest have a tension. And you build something and then realize that they didn't want to actually use it, or they, said that they would use it and the adoption wasn't there. I continue to say this to the day that the nicest thing you could do is be brutally honest. If something
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense, just tell me. Again, it gets into the whole thing about don't fall in love with a product or a feature, whatever. Because if it's not going to be helpful, then I'm not going to waste my time building it. I'm not going to waste your time talking about it. I'm not going to waste your political capital trying to get you to have your team members use it.
That was a big shift from your consulting litigation background is dealing with people who are like, oh, wow, these guys are really genuinely caring and they don't want to hurt my feelings.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Was it overall a nice shift or tough?
And this has been the most rewarding professional experience of my life. I mean, these are
Yeah.
wonderful people, and being able to help them is incredibly gratifying. It's incredibly gratifying. I mean, I want our clients to succeed in small part because they work with us, because they deserve to succeed. They have a very hard job, and I want to be a force for good for them. Full stop.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about this space is like people are so mission driven. You get people like you know, who have like the really robust, business technical background. But once you get into the space, you really get drawn in by the people and the mission and the passion of the people who are already here and the people that you're working with to solve this problem.
Yeah, yeah.
And speaking of that, looking into the future of senior care, Like, where do you see technology innovators such as yourself helping address this problem of, the growing needs of the aging population?
It's gotten hot, right? The space has gotten hot. People are starting to realize this isn't kind of a sleepy backwaters. When I started in
Yeah.
2017,
Yeah.
there's any number of folks that are either thinking about how to help extend remote monitoring for people within the home in a cost-effective way. Everything from I mean, I had the good fortune of going to Amazon and seeing what they're trying to do in senior tech, down to folks that are like me, sitting at a dining room table doing ideation. That's incredibly exciting. Wrestling with what's the right role of an AI agent. We're not confirming dinner reservations or answering the phone at the dentist. And
Mhm.
so I think that there's a line that still needs to be drawn as to where AI agents can be deployed, but inevitably they're going to be there to help augment labor. So every week there's another startup that I meet or a large company that's starting in innovation that I think is exciting. And the reality is 90% will fail, but through the process, 100% of us are going to benefit.
You mentioned AI, and that is the hot topic, so I gotta touch on that a little bit. You made a good point. If you're having to deal with an AI chatbot that's not that great and your dinner reservation doesn't go through or your pizza order doesn't come in on time, yeah, that sucks, but it's not the end of the world. If you're worried that your mom's had a fall inside of their senior living home and you're having to deal with an incompetent AI chatbot, that's a completely different scenario. Where do you see the ethical use of AI in a situation like yours or beyond when we're talking about managing problems for seniors?
The reality is I don't know. That's the reality. I don't know what the right role is going to be. Now, we use it internally to help accelerate our efficiencies and effectiveness, whether it's in coding or developing support articles or responding to client questions. But even then, where we're removed, right? So we're getting phone calls from folks that are at the community as team members or at a home care agency as team members. I have a support team that is here in Atlanta,
Mhm,
and they're very focused on what's the response rate and how quickly can they resolve problems. Because just like no senior calls the senior living community or home agency for fun, no one calls our support line for fun. They want
mhm,
answers. And so we strive to respond and resolve in 10 minutes. Now, can the AI agents help make sure that that can get closer to 8 minutes? Sure, but
mhm,
people work with people. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of experimentation with AI and AI agents in the senior living and home care space, but it's far from settled as to where it's going to be. My internal compass and what I talk with our team is focus on, again, the problem that you're trying to solve and how the technology fits into it. No different than
mhm,
with B2B SaaS. AI is just an AI agents is just another manifestation of technology. If it wouldn't be helpful using an IVR or wouldn't be helpful using traditional hard coded SaaS, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. We're not in the business of chasing shiny balls. We're in the business of helping sales and marketing teams be more efficient and effective. And so if you hit there and it's like, all right, fine, where is there going to be the right to win for the AI? So
mhm. Yeah, it goes back to that laser focus on what's the problem you're solving, right?
exactly.
You hear a lot of individuals going, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have AI in this?"
Right.
And kind of go, "Sure, but what are we actually solving with that other than just making this thing AI, right? Like, what's the
Yeah.
big thing that we're going to try to overcome with that?"
Right. Yep.
Now, one unique aspect about your company journey is that I believe you guys bootstrap the whole thing, right?
We did.
Yeah. So, do you have any one, I guess, advice for companies coming up either in software, hardware, wherever, who are trying to bootstrap their company? And then, how do you feel like bootstrapping kind of helped or hindered your business model? Because I can imagine it really helped facilitate some of that laser focus when you said, "I have a limited capital, I got to go for this."
I mean, as someone that never raised capital, never wanted to raise capital. It's hard for me to argue for the contrary. What I've advised other entrepreneurs is to independently stare in your soul and determine what you are trying to accomplish. And then ask the question, do I need outside capital and how much outside capital do I need? In some instances, the answer could be a resounding yes. I absolutely need it. I started Welcome Home at 47 after a pretty full career and a supportive family that was like, great, if this is what you want to do, you've worked the past 20 years to put us in this situation, go do what you want, even if it fails. And so I had a net and it was okay, worst case scenario, if this is a colossal flame out, I could always just go back to consulting or train myself to be a lawyer again. That's not the situation that a 23 or 33 or some 43 or 53-year-olds will be in. So that was one thing that was unique to my situation. And then the second was, per my earlier comment, I was just looking to build something that I was incredibly proud of, that I thought was going to be incredibly helpful to 1,000 senior living communities. And so, because of my situation, because of my co-founder situation, we could launch that journey on our own, right? And didn't need it. But there are going to be plenty of others that will sit there and it's like, all right, this market opportunity requires us to get very big, very fast. It's very hard for someone bootstrapping to get very big, very fast. Or your business model might require hardware. Growth is expensive, right? So bootstrapping means that occasionally you have to look your wife in the eyes and say, no, we need to write a check. It's a lot easier to write a check when it's software versus hardware. And so that might require it. So I wouldn't have done it any other way. But that's because of what I aspired to at the outset and where I was starting from. And it's going to be different for other people. As to, what are the benefits? My board meetings are walking with my co-founder when he's in town with our dogs, right? And we talk about that. We decide what our happiness is. Like, we've been growing at 40% a year, but maybe you wrote down on a budget that it was going to be growth at 41%. Does that make the year a failure? Should we be upset? Or we grew faster in one product line versus the other product line. Should we lash ourselves because we didn't? No, we learn from it and we move on, right? We don't chase end markets because it makes our total addressable market bigger. We don't chase AI features that might be deployed through engineers that are offshored because we need it to be in some prospectus or serve some other purpose. We have a lot of freedom, both in how we grow the company, what we do, and why we do it.
And I imagine that's a major benefit to your customers, right? Especially since you happen to be so mission driven on this, right? It's like you're creating a product to accomplish your mission, and that's what you're here for, right? You want it to be successful for your employees and for yourself and whatnot, but at the end of the day, you're creating this for the mission of solving the problem for the senior living facilities.
I would like to think so.
So I know we're pushing right up against our time here, so I won't keep you too much longer, but I do want to ask for everybody listening if, they felt that they connected with your story or they felt that they're interested in Welcome Home, where can they get in contact with you?
Well, we're on LinkedIn, Welcome Home Software, or welcomehomesoftware.com is where you'll find us. We continue to grow, especially here in the Atlanta market. And so there's plenty of openings. So if anyone is listening that likes what we're doing and wants to learn more, and encourage you to check out our LinkedIn job postings or go on our website. Any home care operators or senior living operators, love to chat with you as to your challenges and how we might be helpful to it.
How about any AgeTech Connect, AgeTech Atlanta events coming up that you guys will be
Jeff
attending?
is always asking me. I have no idea. this is a highly conferenced space, so
Yes,
yeah,
for sure.
it's inevitable that I'll stop by one.
There we go. We need you in there. But genuinely, it's been really great insights today. I super appreciate you sharing your story. Me as a trying to be a young innovator, I get a lot of insight from what you gave, and then a lot of insight into the struggle with operators and what they're facing. So I just want to say thanks for being out,
Awesome.
and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks a ton.